Thank you so much. First of all, can you hear me, right? First of all, for inviting me here and for organizing this such nice event. So I don't have the kind of answer about power and and philosophy and also politics or imagination. But one thing, one approach that I believe it's interesting to talk about, it's a kind of normative approach. That is something that I'm trying to understand a little bit more. It's really about who and what shape desirable futures. So how we can actually make the future through an emancipatory inquiry approach. So how we can involve more people as possible. This is a slide that sometimes I present to my students because they always ask me, okay, we talk about the future, we see what we are talking about, then we go back to our companies and they ask, okay, why we care, why we need to talk about the future. And today we are here together and we definitely say, yes, we are interested about this topic, we want to know more, but why actually we care, what we are talking about. So every day, in a way or another, we are bombarded by news that talk about the future. So if we look at Formula One, for example, we start thinking it's the electric Formula, the electric version of the Formula One, the future. How we can be more sustainable? What kind of future work we are talking about? So there is discussion. This piece of news here is about is it still human? And a couple of weeks ago, I was in a seminar where people were talking about that the future work is only about human AI collaboration. There is no human alone anymore. Now, I think it's tomorrow that's going to be the IPO of the Elon Musk, one of the Elon Musk companies, SpaceX. And so what is the future city? Are we going to live on Mars or what? So we are trying to think about every day with all the news, what is actually the future. So we care about this because, we talk about the future every day. And there is even different way to talk about the future. For example, Financial Times always talk about forecasting. Are we planning? Are we forecast? How we actually make the future? What about aging population? So even last year, the UK, they designed the industrial strategy, and they actually named the report Forging Our Future. So whatever we do today, it's affecting our future. And that's why we care. However, we live in a different area, faced by grand challenges, pandemics, climate change, wars, inequality, and so on and so forth. So definitely we need to think and do things differently. And this is the reason why I'm doing a little bit of work and research on future making. I'm trying to tell you a little bit what is it, give you a couple examples, and then happy to discuss about that. And one of the most important things I would like to say here, we really take a normative approach. So people in power, we use a lot of the word should behave in a specific way. So future making, broadly speaking, it's the work of making sense of possible and probable future and negotiating and giving forms to the preferred one. The word negotiating, the verb and the understanding of what we mean negotiating for us is very important because it's about bringing together people, stakeholders, and people that usually are not, they don't have the possibility to say what they think about the future. So people actually in power, people taking decisions should actually negotiate what are the preferred and desirable future. I will say a little bit more in this table. Our work, and you can find there's a set of articles talking about these differences. It's a 3 set of co-authors, and I will give you the references soon after, where we try to unpack different levels of future in the literatures with some real example, and why we think that future making is a bit different from what other people talk about, for example, scenario planning, and why we should embrace this approach. So there are 2 main things that we believe future making, is try to bring it in a different position. One is we talk about value-based approach. So we care about the value of the people. And okay, beyond, of course, relying on different theoretical perspectives. So you can see theoretical foundations. And the second thing is that the imagining of the future, actually, they are open and they will change over time. So we don't have some imaginings of the future that are stabilized in the present, but they may be changed over time through something that we call the reflection in the action. And I will give you an example right now just to explain what I mean by that. So some of my colleagues try also to define how we can basically change the imagination, the imagining over time through these 4 phases. You start with imagining, then you have testing, stabilizing, and refining. And what actually you do during these 4 phases is try to empower all set of actors to comes together to something that we define as desirable future. Give you an example. A few months ago, we had Milano Cortina, the Winter and Paralympics Games, and this has been done in 2 different cities. Same country, Italy, but Milano and Cortina. So why they've done this? This was a test, was the first part, the second part of our model here was about testing. I'll tell you why. So basically, the committee of the Olympics, they actually found out that they predict that by 2080, so first by 2040, only 10 countries will be able to host the Winter Olympics. This is due by the climate change and all the problem with the natural snowfall. Okay, and by 2080, only one country in Japan, only one country, basically city in Japan, will be able to host the winter. So this is a big issue, right? So how we solve this? What we can do? So they are trying to testing and refine something that is a decentralized hosting model, because one country alone, they will not be able to host the Olympics. So what they are going to do. So what they did with Milano and Cortina was try to have different cities, and then in the future with different countries, co-host the Olympics. This is the first step. They imagine that in the future there will be not cities where they're going to host the Olympics. Then they test now with Milano and Cortina, and then they're stabilizing right now, thinking about what went well and what went wrong, and try to refining for the next Olympics. And this is so on and so forth. And we are in touch with some of these organizers, try also to see, we are trying to study, collaborate with them, try to see how this process is going on. So this is a kind of actual research we are doing. But these first steps are not enough. As I said, we believe on this emancipatory approach that is based on empowering actors, people who actually did have voice before, what they were actually before voiceless. And we can do this through a democratic process. Now I know this is, I guess with the idea, where's the power, what leaders should do. We actually know that power is concentrated in the hands of few people. And that's why we actually believe that these normative approaches say, okay, people who can take decision, they need to include empower actors as much as possible. This is the only way to achieve something that is desirable at a societal level, and not on one organization or one industry or one city or one country level. We need to think a little bit broader. So what are the main ideas of future making is we seek emancipation. We try to engage sensorially with people, place, and materials. I give you an example in the just next slide, what we mean by engage sensorially with the people and places. It seems a kind of, oh, this is too theoretical, it's kind of crazy, but I'll tell you why. And the reflection in action. And this is also connected to the theoretical foundation of this approach that is really about the pragmatics and the work by Sean and Dewey on how we create this reflection in action and the open inquiry. And then the difference, as I said, from the other kind of approach is imagining of the future that are continuously adjusted. So not just saving scenario A, B, C, D, but try to adjust over time our imagining. So what happens if actually we don't do this, right? So what are an example that the reflection and action failed, and what kind of future we can hope for. This is an example, a sad example, honestly, but it's something that happened. We are in 2013. There is Rio Tinto, a mining company, very large mining company. They got a ministerial consent, so they were doing everything legal. They got a consent from a minister. Here we are in Australia, and they got this consent to destroy it inside to expand an iron ore mine. Okay. However, when they got the consent, they were operating until an outdated Aboriginal law that was actually launched in 1972. This law was, in favor of all the kind of mining operations, and they were not considering any problem about the land. So they could start destroy the lands with no restriction. Rio Tinto used this law in their favor, and they start basically, and I will show you a picture later, to destroy the land just to create this iron mine. So what happened was that during the construction, digging down, what they found were some artifacts, more than 7,000 artifacts belonging to Aboriginal people. And these were telling their story, also talking about the connection past, present, and future. So more construction they were doing, construction work they're doing, more they found out that this was connected to the history, to the past of the Aboriginal people, even finding very precious artifacts, for example, a 40 years old line of plain human hair, something that was very, very important to these people, right? And there was no way to stop the work. Rio Tinto was doing everything legal. More time, after 1 year, they even find something that was 40,000 years old. So it was a very, very important piece of land for the Aboriginal people living there, but there was no way to stop the construction work. They were still doing, there was a very outdated and old law. There was no way to renegotiate on the basis of the new information. Then there was a Senate inquiry, okay? That there was at least something new happen, and they could reevaluate this mine plan and try to say, okay, there are new information. What do we do now? Well, it was too late. So you can see from this picture, pointless to say what is before, what is after. And was quite sad because there was no way to go back to that sea. So they basically destroyed everything that was, this land was part of the Aborigines' land, but there was no way to go back, right? So here, we cannot see the video right now, unless it starts, but I really recommend you to watch this video. Here there is the link, and also this is by The Guardian. And it is quite, through this video, you can see what happened, and there are some testimony from people saying actually the story and how sad it was. Consequences, because it didn't end up very well for Rio Tinto. When it was too late, some executives said to resign, including the CEO. Forget about bonuses, and even worse, they had to, even though it was not super successful, they had to reconstruct the rocks that they destroyed. So that was really something that we have this example in some of our articles where we were saying, there is no, if you don't actually have this open inquiry where while you're making the future, you have a plan, but then the law doesn't allow you, or at least it's protecting you, not changing that plan, you can actually have these kind of consequences. And one thing that then the CEO was, this is one of the quotes after this happened, and we believe that this is also try to summarize what we mean by future making, is since the tragic destruction, right, of the rock shelters, what actually, what they are trying to do now at Rio Tinto, they are trying to change the way in their work, involving people, in this case, the indigenous people, so collaborating with them and thinking about the future generation. So this is actually what we are trying to say. This should be the way our companies, organizations, people with power should think about and take a decision. So that's why we say we believe in this normative approach, because we know that it's not easy to change how power is distributed, but at least we can change how people who are taking decision, they actually taking decision in different way. So you can find this example in some of the work that I'm building, that I published. And this is some of the work that I published together with some of my co-authors. You can find here, this is the work that I mentioned before, that it's a point-counterpoint set of articles. So these are 3 articles, and these are free available on this website, or you can also use you can go on my ResearchGate profile and download them. So these are 3 articles where we try, it's a really conversation, where we try to see why we have different perspectives on the future and which one has some pros, advantages, and some disadvantages. So I'm not saying that future make is better than others, but we have this dialogue with different perspectives and see which perspectives might be the best one in some occasions. One thing that I think you briefly mentioned before is also, I was leading this call for special issue in a journal called Journal of Design, SHIG, Journal of Design, Economics and Innovation. This journal is based in Shanghai. And one thing that we realized with this call and the opportunity to collaborate with people from different geographic areas was, well, it's true we talk about the future, but not everybody has the same understanding of future and temporality. There is a huge difference between West and East mindset, way you see future. For some people, there is no kind of horizontal perspective, but circular perspective. So we also try to understand a little bit more how we can craft future in a different world, where this mindset now, they live together in the same cities, in the same countries. So I invite you to read this stuff. Because I'm not building my work and my research only on my staff or my colleagues, there is plenty of people working on different understanding of future, people looking at the war and how peacemakers think about the future, people talking about technology like geoengineering, how we think about some kind of technology that are not here yet. So distant future, how we bring today the distant future. Some sociological work by Richard Houghton and Elena Esposito that are looking at these new ways of weekend futures and open inquiry. And also the work of some of my colleagues in creativity management or technology innovation management. So they also try to see when in the technology management perspective, how we can have this designable future. So the word designing here, it's in collaboration with technologies. And I'm happy to share this work if you don't have access to them. Just to conclude, I was starting the talk and the idea that grand challenges require us to think differently. I'm trying to propose this idea of future making that is about a collective, value-driven process based on the emancipatory inquiry. And yeah, I use a lot of should and must because I believe in this normative approach. Saying that, thank you so much.